Hello, everyone. Welcome back to yet another political episode. So, Democrats are trying to launch some top recruits, and this has kind of intimidated the Republican base a bit. And I am saying, look, there is absolutely no need to be afraid here. We know what Democrats are trying to do. Democrats are coping, they're seething, they're mad because Republicans, as you can clearly see, have the maximum amount of seats needed to win the said Senate race. In other words, the race is the Senate will be Republican for another 2 years. So we can relax on that. The thing Republicans want to do is try to expand the margin. Okay, but Democrats, obviously, they're trying to do that. In recent news, we just got word that Sherrod Brown, the loser of 2024, is running again. And it's not looking good for him. John Husted is defeating Sherrod Brown in the polls, in recent polls here, which are considered hypothetical polls, but still, we're talking about a guy who, for one time, used to be a political juggernaut. Now, I obviously will tell you this. I doubt it. Sherrod Brown will not win the 2026 Senate race. Here is why. There are different reasons here. So we know what Democrats are trying to do. We got to talk about Ohio. Then there's also Mary Peltola, who is considering running for Dan Sullivan's seat. Chuck Schumer is pressuring Mary Peltola to run. And I will say straight out that she will lose also, even though she's probably the best Democrat they'll come up with. It's pretty much a damnation to Democrats. It's pretty much tight and sealed that, you know what, these seats here, it's very likely that, Democrats will probably lose these said Alaska and Ohio, because then again, the Senate is a federal race, okay? And it's very likely that, obviously, because these are federal races here set in stone and set into place, it's going to follow very in line with the presidential, okay? We see already the patterns of how the governors' races go, right? We know governors are more, political parties have a chance. We see kind of outlandish results in the 2022 governor's race, where you have a red Vermont and a blue Kansas, or in 2023, a blue Kentucky. Okay, Democrats can apparently win in Kentucky, but Kentucky is not a swing state, or not ever considered a battleground state in presidential races. That's because these are involving state parties. These are involving state politics. Federal politics, federal issues. We're talking about federal issues, then we are probably not going to see red states become blue states. There used to be a time in history where, you had a lot of states, a lot of going the opposite direction. It was less partisan, but guess what? Now it's partisan. And it was very similar to the presidential race. I mean, 1976, for example, you saw the Deep South, which was relatively considered conservative, but in the 1970s, go back to the liberals, go back to the Democrats, and you got to see the West, the Wild West, which has been long time considered to be progressive, go more liberal, go more conservative for Gerald Ford. And but surprise, surprise, we're in the 21st century. And because we're in the 21st century, politics and partisanship is grown. You're going to see a more of a U.S. presidential election aligned map. And the fact that Democrats think, we're going to pick up Alaska and Ohio because we're running two candidates that are relatively good candidates. No, I don't think that's going to work. First off, we got to talk about Sherrod Brown, because Sherrod Brown has been in politics for a very, 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 very long time. Yes, Democrats will remind us that this guy at one point, actually, no, he hasn't. He almost carried every county. He just carried all but 4. But this guy was in office since 1983. This guy was in politics since 1983. People are done with you. People are done. Ohio is done hearing your name, and that's why you lost. Okay? It's nothing against you, Mr. Brown. It's just you've been in politics since 1983. The Brown Jazz has worn off. And now we are seeing just a huge level of partisanship in Ohio. Ohio has become an increasingly Republican stronghold. And not to mention, we saw in the 2022 elections, we had the issue of Roe v. Wade, right? Roe v. Wade, that Republicans in Ohio were concerned because Ohio didn't really have a direction on which way abortion would be legal or not. So Democrats were concerned. They were afraid that, of course, Ohio would ban abortion. But ultimately, you see these huge results, 62% for Mike DeWine. And it's just crazy. You have this result right here. Mike DeWine, 86%, 62% against Nan Wally, who I'm sure, yeah, and you'll see here, yeah, Mike DeWine, very horrible primary result. You think that, yeah, DeWine, who is an establishment pawn, would kind of lose the election, but actually, DeWine held on. Like, he did very, 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 very well. And part of the reason is just, I want to know the Democratic, yeah, she was the former mayor of Dayton, right here, and she couldn't even carry that county. Hilarious. Montgomery County, I want to believe. But, yes, it's hilarious that, yeah, no one showed up in Ohio to vote. But, yeah, the best performance was in 2022 when the Senate race, J.D. Vance defeating Tim Ryan by 53%, not even 4 points. That's a 6.1 margin. You see what I mean? So, yeah, you got, other than that, double-digit wins in a year where, you know what, you have judicial races on the Supreme Court. You got the Republican Sharon Kennedy winning by double digits. So, if people aren't even going to turn out, the Democrats, Democratic base, we saw how on fire they were when it came to Roe v. Wade being overturned. If they can't even turn out in Ohio to enshrine abortion rights in Ohio, then why should they turn out for Sherrod Brown? Think of it this way. Yeah, it's probably likely that Sherrod Brown is probably going to perform no better than probably less better, actually, probably worse than his 2024 run. Because let's take a look at 2024. Now, Sherrod Brown had benefits because Kamala Harris voters, right? The Kamala Harris brat queens came out and voted, and they might as well circle Sherrod Brown also. But you'll see Bernie Moreno also had the Trump vote. The Trump vote carried Bernie across to victory. And as we know, he is victorious. And when it comes specifically in regards to this, you'll see Democrats, just like they do in North Carolina, they perform better in presidential years in Ohio. Because remember, Ohio, Democrats are low propensity. Ohio Republicans are likely more to turn out. Their average Ohio union worker, and that rather than the average Democrat. So that's why I really doubt that Sherrod Brown will actually pick up and become the winner. It's just ridiculous. So so does 270. They still have it as likely Republican, despite Brown declaring his run. They know for sure that the Brown Jazz is over, and not to mention Brown represents the very old typical Democrat, which was the 1990s Democrat, the Bill Clinton Democrat, the Democrat of the 90s, who is trying to accumulate to the modern day Democratic Party. He can't, because that's not the party he studied under. And I guarantee you, the establishment and the populist left, they're going to throw him away. And it doesn't really matter if he wins the Democratic primary. He probably will. Just saying, don't get people's hopes up. He's going to lose. I'm just going to be quite honest with you. I do not see Sherrod Brown winning and defeating John Husted, mainly because Husted, he is, of course, the incumbent. That's another benefit that Husted has over Brown. Husted is overall pretty popular and well-liked. He is, of course, an electoral juggernaut. Perhaps he did win mostly because of, let's pull up John Husted real quickly. Yes, John Husted, he did manage to win. This is his Secretary of State run. But he did run for lieutenant governor. Well, actually, no, he was the running mate. But he was a Secretary of State. And yeah, he is very liked. 59, almost 60%. Carried even the capital, Columbus, Ohio. Yep, even Cincinnati. Almost picked up. You could have said that he could pick up Cleveland. You also have, that's 2010. Let's see, 2010. Yeah, it was more decisive, but then again, better in urban areas. But yes, John Husted's well liked. And John Husted, more recent compared to someone like Sherrod Brown. But let's talk about Alaska. Now, Alaska's interesting because you got someone who won in 2022. Now, that's Maria Patola, who did pretty well, honestly. Reason why she probably won was, first off, we're talking about a politician that ran like you saw this landslide win. Well, actually, was it a landslide? Yeah, it was pretty close. But yes, Mary Patola, she picked up pretty close up there, and I would say it's really due to a low propensity vote for Republicans. People were taken by surprise that Mary Patola won, and obviously this gave huge momentum. They picked up a House seat, and that large House seat, she mainly won by being the Native American, trying to get the Native American people out, of course. But in 2022, you got same deal here. Mary Patola is going against Sarah Palin. Sarah Palin's kind of lost her jazz too, and she's relatively weak, to be honest. Looking at her history, not the greatest history to be on electoral strength. Let's see. Is there actually links? Don't know if there are links. Oh yeah, this is at large. But yeah, she ran for governor in 2006. Only an 8-point performance, which, Alaska, you do better when it comes to that. Yeah, she almost lost the city of Anchorage to, actually, maybe Anchorage was more wider because of the split ticketing. But she's not necessarily strong candidate. And ultimately, she ended up winning that due to the ranked choice voting, and by a much wider margin. Then, of course, you get 2024, and you see that Maria Patola ends up losing that race handily. Ranked choice voting there. And reason why is, you had the Trump vote also. Now, you could say, Mary Patola could have won. Well, then again, when you actually look at the debates and to understand who Maria Patola is, now let me make this clear. There were debates, quite a few. There was a Alaska Oil and Gas Association debate. There was the Kodiak Chamber of Commerce debate, and Alaska Public Media, And I mean, I'll tell you, I like Mary Patola seems very, very, very friendly. But in that debate, she came out as dorkish. Okay, she came off as very, very, very dorkish. Okay, and that did not help her. And multiple times she had to be asked to repeat the question multiple times. It's like, lady, and there were times where, guess what? She ended up she wrote down her replies to the questions, and actually she may have leaked the questions. I don't know, but she was given a question, and she gave an answer to a topic that was totally different to the question. Now, this was about fishing, and actually more about oil and gas, and because Alaska is a huge oil and gas state, so they have to talk about oil and gas is huge. But then again, I'm not saying Maria Patola, she knows what she's talking about, but she came off as very nerdy, very dorky, and I'll just tell you, it's not really her best performance. It was actually this is the oil and gas association here. But yes, see if there's some audio here. But yeah, I like her. She's very kind.
I stood firm against any and all efforts to target TAPS. On my watch, that pipeline is going to be refilled, not dismantled, and we're off to a great start. Getting Willow done was the biggest thing we could do in the short term to secure the survival of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. And we're also very, very glad that Pika is coming along even sooner and with the potential over time to add even more oil to the line. However, we should be prepared for more lawsuits and judicial delays. SCOTUS's decision in Corner Post means essentially that there's no statute of limitations for litigation. I'll continue to advocate for and support legislation that reforms judicial review and for development and limits on who can file suit against projects.
So that's a little glimpse here. You can watch the whole thing. I'm not going to go and search around for the whole I'm not going to go jumping around to find the moments where she really screwed up. I'm going to go mainly due to just time purposes, but that was a good reply, and it doesn't mean like these debates even matter after all, because no one watches these debates. So the only debate people watch every year is the presidential debate. That's not even every year. That's every 4 years. But yeah, a lot of these people don't know that these debates even exist. But ultimately, I do think that when it comes to this, if Mary Patola wants to run again, this is what she's going to have to do. She has to run her conservative platform. And the thing is, she's not that conservative, because the third debate, you have to do a lot with the national issues, not the state issues. And she came off as more of she says, I'm all pro Second Amendment. And then she goes and says, but we need more gun law. We need gun safes. We need a ban on assault weapons, though. Look, you cannot go and say I'm pro Second Amendment, but we need to ban assault weapons. That is so contradictory. That doesn't happen. Then you're obviously against Second Amendment. So yeah, Mary Patola isn't. She is strong to a certain point, and I think she's strong and well liked for her personality. She is very friendly and outgoing, and charismatic. But she can be very dorky. I can tell you, she can be very dorky and nerdy. And when you ask her a question, she'll ask you to repeat the question. And then once you give her a question, you ask her to answer the question. She answers the question to another issue, which begs me to question, did you leak the questions beforehand? Which is interesting. But yeah, and I'm just saying, run her or not. It's not even guaranteed if she would run. this seat's probably going to stay Republican. Like I said, the Senate tends to really follow the nation. Okay, governors in different states, they're more compromised. You saw a blue Kentucky and a red Vermont. Okay, not the case in the Senate. And I know just a few years ago you said, "Oh wow, we had just 2010 or actually no 2010. How about 26? 2006 was a better example. Blue states and red states, blue to red, red to blue, and I would say this is just a transition to more partisanship. The Senate is going to start falling in line with national presidential elections. This is just the beginning. Because just going back into history, you'll still see, like, for instance, Bill Clinton, we do know he won half the Solid South. That includes Louisiana, Arkansas, and those states were states that backed Bush by like double digits. So, yeah, less partisanship back then. People didn't vote due to their registration. People voted on the appeal of the candidates. So, yeah, you do have a blue Arkansas and you do have a blue Louisiana. That is true. But then again, you also have, Vermont was still pretty blue, was technically considered Democrat, voting for Bill Clinton. But yes, Minnesota. Let me remind you, Minnesota, and this part of this was the Republican Revolution of 1994, but I just want to add to this. Minnesota hasn't voted Republican since what year? 1972. So, interestingly enough, it's become a new precedent that Senate elections fall in line with national elections. Do you think the Democrat nominee coming up in 2028 will win the state of Alaska? I don't think Alaska's ready for that yet. So therefore, Democrats aren't going to win Alaska. Do you think the Democratic nominee is going to win Ohio? Not with the results we saw last year. Are you kidding? Then the Democrats will not win Ohio. It's that simple. Now, you do have some people that, like Roy Cooper, who Democrats could and can win North Carolina, but here's the problem with Roy Cooper, okay? Roy Cooper has not been in office as long as, let's just say, Sherrod Brown, who's been in politics since the 80s, and I think Brown's in the gutter. He's done. He is done and kaput, and I was kind of surprised to hear that he was running again, but I wasn't coping because I knew he would lose. He is running in the year that Democrats are not going to turn out, or maybe for TDS reasons. But look, Ohio Democrats didn't turn out for Roe v. Wade, so it's very unlikely they're going to turn out in this issue. But North Carolina is going to be interesting too, because North Carolina, especially Democrats, have a hard time turning out. And yes, you do have Roy Cooper, who is considered an electoral juggernaut over the years. Yeah, 61%, 100%, but he was running unopposed though. Yeah, this is Josh Stein, 2016 though. Yeah, you get what I'm saying. But let's see here. Yeah, 2016, all the Democrats came out to vote for Hillary Clinton. That really supported Roy Cooper, but let's just say this was a midterm year. I would guarantee you Pat McCrory, despite him being very unpopular, McCrory would have won. He would have won, because this is all Cooper could have done. Cooper barely won against Pat McCrory, and McCrory was underwater as an unpopular governor. I found that to be very interesting. In 2020, though, Roy Cooper did better. You could say that, it was because of Joe Biden, despite Joe Biden not winning North Carolina. But against Dan Forrest, That could be a reason, but I would say it's, Roy Cooper mostly won because the African American voters, as you can clearly see up here, they voted. They came out and voted at mass because they were voting for Biden Harris. They were aroused due to the Black Lives Matter issue. It was, after all, 2020. But you can't explain why we go from this to suddenly we go to North Carolina 2022, where it's another situation in regards to Ohio, where judicial races, Republican Democrats lose every single Supreme Court seat. Every single one. Actually, yeah. You got appeals court, Supreme Court. They lost. They could have flipped 2 Supreme Court seats for Roe v. Wade, and they couldn't even do that. That's how bad they are. That's how stupid. They don't show up. So, do you think they're going to show up for Roy? Are people, all the black voters, going to show up this time around? Well, they didn't show up to certify Roe v. Wade. So I have no real concerns that they're going to show up at this time around. Oh, for what? To spite Trump? Jeez Louise, come on. So yeah, I am really, really skeptical. And you also had a Senate election, which was realistically the Democrats' best performance in North Carolina that year, in which they ended up losing by 2 points. You got a Supreme Court justice, Jerry Beasley, who I would have imagined would have aroused a lot of the African-American women, but Ted Budd ended up getting over 50% of the vote. 50%. Look at the black belt. More lighter blue compared to 2 years ago. But yeah, you get what I'm saying here. It's quite amusing. So I am not really concerned about North Carolina. Republicans are probably going to hold on to that. Democrats are going to play defense in Michigan and Georgia. They should be more concerned about Oseth underperforming. Michigan, they're probably going to keep. And I'm not going to necessarily say that Maine is necessarily going to be called yet, because I am going to tell you right now, I do not think Susan Collins is going to run. I know a lot of people are downplaying this. A lot of people are getting their hopes up saying, it's Collins is going to announce her campaign. Susan Collins hasn't announced her campaign yet. And this is not a good sign. This is a likely indication that Susan Collins is throwing in the towel. And here's why I think that's going to be the case. And now I hope I'm wrong. And I hope I am. I refuse to jinx it. But yes, you see this senator. She's been in here since 1997. That's a very, very long time. She's holding on to a blue seat. Okay, so eventually it's probably going to be this year, or it's going to be 2030. No, actually, 2030. Yeah, 2032. 2032, I doubt she's running in 2032, being quite honest with you. How old is this senator? She is 72 years old, guys. 72. And when she runs again, she'll be like 78. So I think she's possibly going to throw in the towel. And if she does that, then we got to be prepared for it. I've already prepared myself. We're going to prepare the channel. Susan Collins has publicly expressed interest. There has been no indications about her announcing it. She probably could. AIPAC did endorse her. She did raise over $6 million. She has spent $2 million, but for what though? For what though? So I do think Inside Elections, Cook Political Report, these liberal outlets, they're actually cheering on or predicting that she'll run, but they could be scoring a win in this. because I'm with Race to the White House. Because when did Susan Collins declare her run in 2020? When did she declare her run? We could Google this. When did Susan Collins declare her run for re-election in 2020? AI mode, even though a lot of people don't like it, but we're not going to go into different sources. Okay, December 18th, 2019, Andy Munn speculated her plans. Okay, if she hasn't declared her run by December 18th, I think she's not running. Now, I do think during that time, too, she probably was considering about dropping out, too, because then again, you got multiple polls saying that, oh, you're probably not going to win, this Gideon gal's going to defeat you, yada, yada, yada. And again, you got Sarah Gideon, who was defeated pretty badly in 2020, despite this being a presidential year, Joe Biden, yada, yada, yada. Quite ironic, but yeah, Democrats are trying desperately, but even if they do win Ohio, which they won't, they do win Alaska, Georgia, this would be their best performance. Look, Republicans still have vice presidency. Okay, now, what if they pull something off in Iowa? Then there you go. Democrats get the Senate. But let's be honest with ourselves. Although you got the Democrat, Joni Ernst, she is somewhat weak and vulnerable. Yeah, she's overcome some challenges. Now, the state is trending left, but now I do think it's going to trend more right. Mostly due to the amount of registration increase that the state has received from 2020 to 2026. It's pretty much going to be solid Republican in 2028. Joni Ernst should have no problem getting reelected. So, yeah, this is Democrats' best case scenario. They're going to have to perform in one state, well, actually, 3 states. They have to flip 3 states where Trump won by 10 points. Crazy. And we know that's not going to happen. Period. It would be hilarious if that actually did happen. It would make them, that would be their blue wave. But the Senate is done with them. It's chicken dinner. It's fresh from the oven. It's not going to happen. They're going to, Republicans, their agenda for the Senate is not to win it. They're going to win it. They're going to have to play defense and keep North Carolina. Probably that's going to happen. Probably pick up Georgia and go after Michigan. And that's probably going to be their year. But anyway, what do you guys think in regards to this video? Let me know down below. And as always, I'll see you all in the next political episode.